let's move on. Okay, nutrition. So, once again, early thoughts, nutrition, when that became even a thought in your brain, and then how it's kind of progressed to where you are now, and then what you,
Yeah.
where you point people.
This is
So the great unknown.
nutrition tracks the same arc. You know what I mean? So, and I bet you have a similar experience. So, high school football, weight training, total meathead diet, bodybuilder type diet, high protein, low fat. You know, it was all about pre-workout, post-workout shakes. You know what I mean? And this was the '90s, so that was common, right? People that were into exercise, you know, they were cutting out fats. You know what I mean? They thought fat was was a bad thing. Tons of protein, you know, high protein, lean chicken breasts, you know, boiled salmon, all that kind of stuff, white rice, and so that's what I did growing up.
So what about before that? Like family.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think it was something we talked about. I mean, I definitely was blessed to grow up in a family that always sat around the dinner table,
Right.
prepared meals. Both my parents were amazing cooks, so we always ate well. You know what I mean? Ate good food, but it was, you know, casserole.
Right.
There was no like nutritional element to it. I got treats. I mean, we definitely weren't, you know, eating takeout 24/7 and sugary cereals or anything like that. You know what I mean? There was a common sense in the family that, you know, we had to eat balanced and all that kind of stuff, but there was no,
Right.
you know, restrictions really to speak of, that kind of thing. But I wanted to, in high school, I wanted to get into really good shape, and so there was like a group of guys. I remember there was one guy that I trained with who was in great shape, and I was at a Dunkin' Donuts at like 9 o'clock at night hanging out, and I had a bagel in my hand. He came up and slapped the bagel out of my hand. He's like, "You can't eat that stuff." So like there was this, you know, meathead mentality of what bodybuilding nutrition looked like, and I carried that through most of my 20s and didn't really play around with it much. But what I definitely knew looking back was that I had a sense that whatever I was eating, and I was eating pretty disciplined and at least adhering to some sort of plan, I was leaving something on the table. Like it just wasn't, like I didn't feel like I was like, I should be bigger, stronger, leaner, feel better. I should feel better. Like I was still, you know, I'd have a lunch, even like a nice balanced lunch, and I would have that 2 o'clock crash, you know what I mean? So that all the way through my 20s and 30s, well, and then there was the period of time where I ate whatever I wanted and just kind of let myself go. And then as I started getting back on this train and the arc was coming up, I started playing around with more diets, and that CrossFit was getting to be a big deal when I was getting out of the military, and they have I think predominantly like a paleo style diet, right. Which I always encourage everybody to start there. That would be the diet that I think is the most easiest to adhere to, the most balanced. It makes sense. It's just real food. You know what I mean? Yeah. Meats, less vegetables, processed. Less fruit. Yeah, no processed stuff. I mean, that's stuff.
In general, the more you can eliminate processed.
Yeah, exactly. And so I started playing around with paleo and saw improvements. Like I was, you know, and that they do encourage healthy fats. You know what I mean? Nuts and avocados and you know, coconut oils and olive oils. So as I started taking in more fat, I just felt better. And I don't know if there's any science to support this, but I felt like my joints were greased. You know what I mean? I had typically, like when I would weight lift, I would have a lot of soreness in my shoulders, and the more fat that I took on, I felt like that kind of went away. So then at about that time, keto started becoming a thing. And I was like, this is interesting. 80% of your calories from fat, like that was completely contradictory to everything I learned in the 90s. Right. Fat's going to give you health, you know, disease, cardiovascular problems. But I was in this experimenting thing. I was like, I'll do it for 20, 30 days. And as soon as I got into it, and I got keto flu really bad the first couple times I played around with it, like really bad. Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah, like the first 7 days.
Thanks for warning me as I've tried it.
No, yeah. Just push you off the cliff. When you go and you completely cut out, especially if you have a lot of sugars, you know, in your normal diet, if you cut out all the carbohydrates and sugars, your body hasn't kicked into ketosis, so it doesn't it's like scrambling for energy.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It doesn't know. It hasn't become efficient in tapping into your fat sources. So it basically is like you don't have any energy. And the keto flu is just like the feeling that you're lethargic, you have no energy.
Headaches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I do know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
and then once you get on the other side of that, now your body is in ketosis. It's taking the fat stores that you've already stored up and using them for energy, and then when you, my experience, and clearly not everybody's the same, but my experience was once you get into that period of ketosis where you're burning fat, and I also have the philosophy that your brain loves fat, and if this entire experience is about training the brain, you know what I mean, and your brain is control of your emotions and everything else, and your brain is fed on fat and really likes it,
Right.
My mental clarity improved, my focus improved, I wasn't having midday crashes, I had sustained energy, so I was like, I'm in, you know what I mean? And so from then, it's probably been 2 or 3 years now, I've done some modified versions of keto, and from a performance perspective, I've never felt better. You know, I don't crave carbs, I don't feel like they're important. We play around with them in our ultra training,
Right.
just sheerly out of the amount of calories that we're burning and trying to figure out what the optimal balance is. But what with all that said, so I've done everything, every type of diet, you know what I mean? Looking back, one, we don't know. There's so much we don't know about nutrition, and there's so much that we got wrong early
Right.
on.
Right.
You know what I mean? The food pyramid, you know what I mean? The fats are the, you know, the culprit, all that kind of stuff. And I have a philosophy, in addition to this thought about when you're on the diving board and you overcame that fear, but you didn't necessarily analyze or have the mind-body connection. I think that we have generations of people that didn't live on healthy fats, that just cut them out and replaced them with processed stuff. And I think that's done long-term damage to our brain. I really do.
And fast food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and so feeding the brain in a way that, you know, that we just should, if you just take all the noise away from modern day America, you know, we should be living off the land. You know what I mean? And whether you believe in eating meat or not,
Right.
it doesn't matter. But like vegetables and nuts and just real food, that makes the entire system, which is a system and everything relies on each other, better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you have a better day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're more resilient. So, but I'm excited because my nutrition quest is far from over. You know,
Right.
I have so many ideas about, and so sorry. The last piece to that was fasting, which we just put in.
Because that's, to me, has been the most.
Game changer.
Yeah. Yeah.
We eat way too much. So again, back in the 60s, as the 90s, it was 6 small meals a day every 2 to 3 hours. That was, you know what I mean? So, and the science on fasting, I don't have it at my fingertips, but it's pretty compelling. Both in longevity, so like cellular rejuvenation, like when your body's not eating, it's going back to work on dead cells. So I think there's a longevity aspect to it. But also just like your natural rhythms, you know what I mean? Like we just weren't designed to have food at our fingertips 24/7, you know?
Yes.
So, and then fasting is not only, I think, a nutritional benefit, and all this, you know, buyer beware, right? You know, do your own research, figure your own stuff out. But I think fasting is something beneficial to play around with, both for your health, but also, again, for mental toughness.
It all comes back to
Right. So we've both done a 72-hour, 3-day fast.
Okay, 5.
Oh, jeez, so I'm already behind. You've done a 5? When did
I told you about it. Yeah. I did 5.
Yeah. Well,
That was interesting.
you know, it's the same scenario as like being a creative. Like you want to go write a book and you get up against the white paper and you stop and you go get distracted and you go do other things. Well, we fill that void with food a lot. You know what I mean? So 3 days with no food, just water, and you're trying to do work and stuff, and you start having that hunger pain, or you're like gravitating. So I should just go grab a handful of nuts. Even if you're eating healthy, there's still this reaction to, and it's comfort in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like I'm bored or I'm stressed, I'm just gonna go comfort myself with some nutrition, some food. And when you force yourself to remove yourself from that outlet, you then have to deal with it. You have to like be like, all right, I don't need this food. I've got to go back to the task at hand, and that's just all part of the cycle of training your brain to do things it doesn't want to do.
Right.
As long as you believe, I think, as long as you're being conscious about the restriction is beneficial for you. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
we're not masochistic here. We're
Right.
not
Right.
trying, maybe a little bit, but we're not just trying to put ourselves into pain unnecessarily. There's always some sort of like objective to what we're doing. But yeah, so high fat fasting. I mean, that I'm sticking to that for a long time, and I my preference is if I can do one meal a day, that's my preference. I feel the best on it. Takes out the complication of having to do food planning or any of that kind of stuff. But that is hard. By 1 o'clock, I'm usually struggling a little bit. Some days are better than the other. So I'm actually I've got this plan post this race to change some things. I want to do like a I'm going to try and work on a power shake for like 3 p.m. just to kind of get me, and then do that one meal at 5 or 6.
Right.
I'm going to do that for a while and see how it goes. Because the other thing too with fasting and with keto is I definitely feel like I'm neglecting some important like vitamins and amino acids and different things that I probably could just throw into a shake and make sure I get all of it.
Right.
But yeah,
we're both trying not to lose weight at this point.
right. No, yeah,
So
yeah.
that becomes like if I'm fasting, one meal a day, I can maintain, and we'll talk about this in a sec, but there's a point where I'm starting to lose weight and I'm like, oh, I don't want to. I gotta find, for me, I have to find that balance where, okay, I'm staying where I'm at.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe I'm adding in a like you said, 3 o'clock shake or 3 o'clock little snack or just something
Right.
to find that balance. And I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to find.
Yeah. I've always, so a couple things. One, if you haven't started yet, start now. Even if you're 40, 50, doesn't matter. Start now. But it is really important to start. Yeah, like the younger you can start, the better. Because what I've also learned is, when you stick to it for a long period of time, you will understand your body and what your body needs. Like I remember Schwarzenegger would talk about it, how he just knew, like throughout his training, what needed improvement, what nutrition was lacking. Like you just get in tune with your body.
Right.
And so like I can go 3-4 days and be like, yeah, I need to maybe up the vegetables or restrict this, or you know what I mean. And you can figure your body out eventually, right?
Right.
When you first get started, you have no clue.
Right.
And you also just think you're just suffering. You're just like, I just want to eat cookies, you know what I mean? But over a period of time, I don't know how long that is, but over some period of time, you'll be able to figure your body out. And which also does give you some freedom, because I can let things slide for a little period of time and then I can clean it back up very quickly. I'm like, all right, I gotta, you know, that was a rough weekend, you know, it's time Monday, let's tighten it up a little bit, you know, so.
And I found, which I think a lot of people would benefit from this if they kind of start doing some of this fasting, and I feel better hungry than I do full.
I don't know, isn't that crazy?
Like if I eat to full, I'm miserable right after, like, ugh. And then I get sit on the couch for 2 or 3 hours.
Right.
But I can go with no food, and sure, like my brain goes, oh, you're hungry, you go get something. And then as soon as I like mentally commit, I'm not gonna get something, that goes away.
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel great. And then, so my first 3-day fast, I didn't really push exercise that hard. My second, I still did some exercising. My second 3-day fast, I did full 3-hour workouts every day.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a drop off in it. I mean,
I know.
top end performance, I'm sure I definitely lost some in speed, explosiveness, for sure. But I was able to do all those workouts. Yeah. And now I've done a 5-day fast, and the 5-day, it starts to, there's definitely a decline after 3.
Yeah.
But it's like, we've talked about this, the wants and needs. There's no doubt that, like, like I have one cookie and I want another, and my brain, like everything in my body is like, yeah, go get another.
Yeah.
Like that's just sugar calling me. That's just
Yeah.
my brain trying to trick me in. You know,
Right.
and you know, every time that hunger comes up now, it's like, do I really need to eat? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
Almost
Right.
every time.
Right.
And that knowledge that if I haven't really put this into practice so well, but knowing that if I eat more, I'm gonna feel worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's like skipping a workout, right? You know what I mean? You're like, well, it would be nice right now to get comfortable and skip it, but you'll feel worse knowing that you didn't do it than if you actually just go through it. You'll feel better. Same thing goes with nutrition.
Right.
And I also just think fasting, and I also hate buzzwords, but whatever, you gotta call it something. It actually gives you a lot of freedom. So if you're trying to adhere to some sort of diet, you know what I mean, some sort of plan. So like I know, like, especially if I'm traveling for work and I go to a business meal and you know there's no food there that is what I would like to eat or should eat, I'll just skip it. You know what I mean? Like you know, if I know I got a busy day and I'm gonna be, you know, off traveling or something like that, I'll just be like, I'll just eat tonight when I can go get something that I want. And there's gonna be it's not gonna be detrimental to my focus or to my energy, and it just gives you more freedom to not feel like you have to be compelled to eat all the time and whatever's in front of you. You're like, oh, I haven't eaten in 10 hours. I might as well. Everybody else is eating, you know, pizza. I might as well grab a piece of pizza.
Right.
So it does free you up in a lot of ways, but it takes some discipline. I don't know. I actually really like nutrition. I like playing around with it.
Right.
I like the way I feel when I eat clean, so I don't struggle, I don't think. And I have cheat days. Even on keto, when I first started keto, I went really strict because I felt that when I broke out of ketosis, getting back into it was a struggle. So I was like, I might as well just stay off of it. But now, especially with the training that we're doing, you know, I'll have a Sunday where I just eat whatever I want.
Right.
So it's, you know,
And
still have to enjoy life.
And
You know?
fasting too, combined with keto, gets you into ketosis. It
Yeah.
helps you
Yep.
stay in. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There's a social aspect to food that is. So we just had a company meeting, and it's funny. Like they didn't, like we're it's Friday, so 2 days out from this race. You know, I'm trying to be, and even though the taper week.
Yeah.
That's just a roll of dice. Like I have not mastered that at all. But I was like, I definitely don't want. They had wraps and they had a pasta soup thing. And I'm like, I just don't want anything here. But I didn't want to go to the table and sit down and not have food and just be that awkward guy either. So like
That's weak.
I grabbed. But there is a socialness too.
I've done it. It's so unbelievably uncomfortable.
Well, I ended up grabbing one of the meat wraps and pulled out and I just ate the meat. But I feel like there's a certain amount of, you know, I feel this from D and I used to have some issues with this. Like, I'm doing this, she should do this, or you know that you're putting these pressures on other people. Like, oh, look at Ben, he's eating. Like,
Right.
I do feel bad putting those pressures on people when they're not asking for it. And,
Right.
you know, like, oh, you're gonna eat that? You have a cake over there, and I'm not eating it. Yeah,
Right.
That's the last thing I want to do.
I know, but
I also like I'm gonna do me.
Right. I've gotten past that. I went to a conference in Boston, and you know there was a luncheon. Everybody sits down, and they serve you your plates, and it was like three plates and stuff. And I wasn't eating. I was doing one meal that day, and so there was 8 of us. We were all chit chatting, and they would put a plate down, and then they would take it away full. And I get it. It is awkward, and people would be like, "You're not eating?" And I'd be like, "No, I only eat one meal a day." And I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, but at some point you do have to kind of do you.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it is very awkward. Fortunately, the guys that I work with, they all know what I'm doing, so they're like, "Oh." And that night, I went to a steakhouse. There was like 10 of us at the table, and I got the biggest steak on the menu, and that was all I ate that night, and I ate it like in 2 minutes. It was awesome. It felt great.
Right.
And so, I mean, at the end of the day, when you think about it, like, is it worth compromising your goals and objectives because of how other people feel? You know what I mean?
Right.
And by all means, I don't mean being a jerk or like proselytizing the stuff. You know what I mean? Like if people want to talk about this, they'll get 3 hours.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'll give it to them. But if they don't want to talk about it, then it's like I don't have any expectation that you're gonna understand what we're trying to do here. And you know, it's just I'm not trying to indict you for, you know,
Right.
eating the cheesecake, but I'm not gonna let that pressure me into, you know, that on the nutrition side, I think I'm pretty comfortable with.
Right.
You know.
There's it's something else that I wish people knew. So, how good it feels to do what we're doing, how good it feels, how fast it feels better than full, and then the thing that I think is missing most is, so like, if you tell somebody you can go, we're gonna give you a gift card to go to this super high-end restaurant, or McDonald's. What are you gonna pick? Well, I want to go have a special meal.
Yeah.
You want to make any meal amazing, fast for 3 days.
Yeah.
Whatever you're having next, that
Yeah.
first thing you do eat
Yeah.
after 3 days,
Yeah.
or even just a day. Like,
Yeah.
like you just said, like
Yeah.
you go through the day. I heard Lex Friedman on one of his podcasts, and he was talking about how anytime he's going to go out to dinner, he always fasts to that dinner.
Yeah.
It's a, and I was like, oh, how brilliant is that? Because it doesn't matter what it is. It just tastes amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and I think there's actually science that shows that when you're doing that, what you consume when you break your fast, it's less important, right? So you can be a little bit more lenient on, right? So if you're going out and maybe there's pasta to dinner or like dessert, whatever, if you're fasting regularly, the body's a little bit less concerned about what you're putting in.
Right.
Now, I mean, if you're training, you stick to your diet.
Right.
But yeah, that's the other thing. Like if I know I got a big Thanksgiving dinner coming up or something like that, like, you know, one, it makes food taste amazing. And not just amazing, but like really amazing. You know what I mean? Like if nothing, just try it. You know what I mean? Because
it's like
you'll
borderline orgasm.
Yeah, you'll be surprised.
Really, like it's like
Yeah.
like I put whatever it is, and it goes in your mouth, and it's like, and you just want to sit there with it, like on your taste
And
buds.
you also don't want to, when you do that, you don't want to cheapen it with cheap food. You know what I mean? Like you want a good meal. You know what I mean? So, and I enjoy that. You know what I mean? Like if you do a hard training session in the morning, a full day of work, it's 6 o'clock. You haven't been watching your watch for dinner time. And you just get through the day, and you're productive, and then you can sit down and enjoy food. That's the best day for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of science that supports that you sleep better on fasting. You know, I've actually started trying to eat. I would eat right up until 8 o'clock, which is when my cutoff would be, and then I'd be in bed by 9. You know what I mean? I've been trying to pull that back because I think there's something that shows that if you have a longer window from when you eat to when you go to sleep, you sleep better. You know what I mean? So that's. I fortunately have really good. I sleep really well. So and I know a lot of people struggle with that. So that exercise, nutrition, and sleep are huge. You know what I mean? I think I'm just naturally okay on sleep, which is good. But it also is probably very much connected to what we're putting in the day.
Right.
You know what I mean? That we're working hard, and you've earned your sleep at that point.
So my arc is so different than yours.
Really?
Oh, we're not even close. Yeah. So early on, so my mother got her master's degree in nutrition. And even before that, obviously she was all interested in nutrition early on, and I was the house that my friends would give me a hard time. Oh, Ben's got healthy crap at his house, which literally just meant we had yogurt.
Yeah, back then that's what that meant. Yeah.
And we didn't have sugar cereals.
Right.
For the most part.
Right.
But yeah, we were considered kind of the healthy family. But so swim meets, every swim meet afterwards we hit McDonald's. Every travel anywhere we hit some fast food place. Pretty much for every sport. I never once paid attention. High school football, never once. I could eat whatever I wanted. I mean, cereal. I'd come home and have like 2 frozen pizzas and gallon of milk, you know, like just anything, everything. And I was always like ridiculously thin.
Yeah.
You know, low
Yeah.
body fat. I was just,
That
But,
drives most people crazy.
at that time, I mean, I was so active. I mean, literally,
Yeah.
like, even before high school, like, I mean, every day was out. My mother's my mother's phrase that she always would say, "It's too nice of a day." I don't even know what that means.
Oh, yeah.
You break
Get
down the
outside.
words. But the words like
Yeah.
it's too nice, like it's too nice, like but yeah. So I was in the woods playing. We had across the street there was a guy. We'd always play baseball or tag or it would just nonstop go all day long every day. And even once I got in high school, you know, besides the video game phases, I was just stupid active.
Yeah.
So I was just burning so much, and that didn't change until after meeting D
Yeah.
and be and I hadn't put on a lot of weight. Literally, I mean, you could look at the arc as my exercise went down.
Yeah.
That started to catch up with me.
Right.
Obviously,
Right.
Like that's a pretty simple equation. So, but I never once paid attention to anything. I mean, I remember JD and I, who we were workout partners in high school all the time, and we'd get on the scale every time we go to the weight room. We were trying to gain weight, like we couldn't. Like,
Yeah. Right.
I could get muscle to go up,
Yeah.
and yeah, so that all caught up with me. So the shakes and none of that.
Didn't work.
Eat eggs and
Yeah.
I just whatever the heck I wanted,
Right.
whenever I wanted, and then it became when it became apparent that I needed to change something. Then I started looking at where I could cut back, and the first big thing was I had started eating cereal for lunch. I would always have. I was working in an architectural firm, and I'd have every day at lunch. I'd have a large sub with a bag of chips and a Coke.
Yeah.
I mean, couple thousand calories right
Yeah,
there, boom.
yeah.
And then I just decided I switched to let's have a bowl of cereal, which I love cereal. I've always been a big fan. Honey Bunches of Oats was my thing. And but one bowl of cereal with milk was 260 calories. Like I
right.
just cut off
Right.
1,700 calories like that
Yeah.
for something I'm just as happy with.
Yep.
And then that's where, for me, my diet journey was just like, oh, where else can I cut things?
Yeah.
Oh, can I cut this? Like I switched to Diet Coke, which, yeah, that's its
Yeah,
own,
yeah, yeah.
own different thing. But I was kind of, I would just look at the calorie. I mean, my mother, I'd always run things by my mother, like this diet fat, this diet, and
Yeah.
she'd always be like, at the end of the day, how much you burn and how much you take in.
Right.
So
Right.
I mean, it's like, okay, so I was just focused on literally that calorie count,
Yeah.
even though I wasn't. There was a point where I had lost a lot and I wanted to lose more. Where
Yeah.
I did start to like really start tracking calories
Right.
and
Well, that's where everybody should start. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
just less calories in than calories out. You know what I mean?
it really is the simple
Yeah.
equation. And
Right.
finding
Start there.
and finding things that you can. I think too many people try to like big picture, try to like go right in.
Right.
Where that little change for me, it was just one little change, or like more recently switching to darker chocolates.
Mm.
You know, instead of a milk chocolate, trying to reduce the sweetness of like tea or
Yeah.
whatever. Like let's can I get into brewed tea, you know, and unsweetened, and
Yeah.
just looking for little places. And then once like the dark chocolate's a good example. I'm starting to really enjoy dark chocolate.
Yeah.
And the milk chocolate is kind of disgusting to
Right.
me at this point.
Sitting right with you.
It's too sweet. It's shockingly sweet. Like, ugh, I don't want that. And so you can kind of train your body into liking things that are a healthier option, and just those little, all those little changes
Yeah.
that snowball. But yeah, so I never did any of the workout kind of meathead stuff.
Yeah.
Like it was just like whatever.
Right.
Put it in me.
Right.
I used to joke with my mom. I'm like, I'm gonna open a restaurant that's because like '90s, you know, all the diet fad, everything
Right.
was counting calories. You know,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna open a restaurant that has we're gonna have the most calories, the most everything, which I believe Taco Bell ended up kind of
Right.
doing. So the arc was kind of different there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you said we were at the beach this summer. And you're like post workout. I said, what do you or pre workout? That's what it was.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I never heard of that.
I've never heard that phrase.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm sure I've heard it bantered around, but never even thought about that.
Well, it's funny when you start playing around with nutrition, when you start to realize, this is my experience, but you start to realize what is completely unnecessary and what is essential. You know what I mean? Like honestly, I don't do supplements. I did all the supplements all the time. You know what I mean? Creatine, the pre-workouts, the you know, the amino acids, all that stuff. Because that's what I was told. Yeah, that's what I was told to do, and other people had success doing it, and so I went for it. Don't do any of that kind of stuff anymore. And I believe that all the things that you need are in real food, right? Figuring out what the right real foods are for you, but it's all right there. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, when was that you? So, you were doing a lot of small triathlons at the time that you were starting to like cut some things out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Getting healthy, losing weight, exercising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I started just. It was just running. Like literally, like around the block, less than a mile.
Yeah.
Was brutal to me, and there was a point where I decided, okay, I'm gonna do a little bit more than this, and I took the dog, and I run with the dog, and then drop him off, and then I'd do another loop.
Yeah.
And then there was a point where I realized the second loop feels better than the first, which I think a lot of people never. There's no doubt there's that. For me, it's the first couple miles.
Yep.
Are the hardest miles in the whole.
Yeah.
Whatever length.
Right.
Up to a point.
Yeah.
We're starting to get in the 30s and 40s.
It's
Okay.
off again.
It starts going the other way, but
I'll tell you a little bit more about my 42nd mile yesterday.
Yeah. So that, and so I started. I was building on my runs. I think I got up to maybe like 5. I was doing like a 5-mile loop. And actually, when we started building this house, there's a 7-mile road, which is uphill both ways, as we discussed yesterday.
Yeah.
I was doing that, and then I saw our triathlon the University of Maine had a sprint triathlon, and I had been swimming a little bit here and there, and I was like, oh, I know how. Like I hadn't had any experience on the bike as far as racing goes, but it's like riding a bike. You know, I know how to do it.
Right.
So I'll just swim, bike, and then see in the runs a distance that I could do. So I tried it.
Yeah.
And it was fun, and yeah. But I wasn't. But then there was like 8-year gap before I did another one or so. But I did a marathon in between, which was. I've told you was the darkest I've ever been, and it's like the base jumpers or whatever that are chasing that adrenaline rush. Like I've been chasing that feeling, getting done and bawling my eyes out, not knowing why I'm bawling, pushing through the pain that I did, and just the overwhelming gratefulness of life, of everything. It's just
If you haven't cried on a run yet, then you still have some work to do. That's what I say. You haven't emptied the tank yet.
And it's a cool thing. It's liberating in a weird way.
I remember mine.
Yeah, some of my arcs are different than yours.
Yeah, and actually I think that's a pretty normal arc. You know what I mean? Especially for anybody that has, you know, if you're not struggling with weight or, you know, your desire to lose weight, and you're just, you know, average guy feeling okay about your waistline and all that kind of stuff. You know, you eat a standard American diet. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you can even do that and feel like you're doing okay. You know what I mean? And that's my big thing. Again, back to the mental health side of stuff. You know, and mental health is a loaded word, but I'm just talking about like improving your mental capacity. Like I think nutrition is directly tied to it. And even though you're waking up and having an egg sandwich for breakfast and a sandwich for lunch and, you know, some lasagna for dinner, and you're not gaining weight and you feel okay, you know what I mean? You feel okay. I don't know that we completely understand exactly what kind of long-term damage that's doing to like our behavior, like how we act as humans, and playing around with that has been a huge improvement. You know what I mean? But I mean, all that said, I'm gonna keep saying this, like it's still a work in progress. Like I still have very bad days. Like I still struggle with a lot of, you know, insecurities, fears, things that drag me down on a regular basis. I feel better equipped, and I can tell because I'm trying to pass that on to my kids.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like my kids are all healthy, we eat well. I don't really care what path they take in life. You know what I mean? Like they can eat whatever they want, or they can eat really clean. What, it doesn't matter. All I want them to understand is the connection between their food and their life, and to be aware of, to spend that time early on being like, okay, I just ate pizza 7 days in a row. How do I feel?
Absolutely.
Is there something else I could do instead of that? You know what I mean? And just being aware of both the amount of calories you're taking, the composition of your food, and playing around with it. Like I have, some kids are like, I don't like lactose, or you know what I mean, I feel better when I do this, or just be aware of it. You know what I mean? And the earlier you can start that, the better, because when you're just becoming aware of your nutrition when you're 40, you can still fix it.
Right.
You absolutely can. But you just lost 20 years of playing scientist with your body chemistry,
Yeah.
So start early. But if not, just play around with stuff. And the other thing too is just you got to stick with it. You know what I mean? Like just like you said, the first mile of every run I've ever run has always sucked. Maybe once in a while I'll be like, well, this is feeling good. But in general, it's all, so if I quit every time I didn't feel good, I would never get past that first mile.
Right.
Same thing goes with nutrition.
Or if you've only run 1 mile.
Right. Yeah, that's where a lot of people
You're
stop.
just in
Right.
the misery of it.
Right.
Yeah. The